4:30 a.m., June 18, 2026. Port Everglades, berth 23. Fort Lauderdale, Florida. A Panamanian-flagged feeder vessel, the MV Catalina Crest, sat under the sodium arc lights of the CBP tomographic X-ray bay, her hull riding high against the dock fenders. 41 wooden shipping crates occupied her forward hold, each stenciled with the same lot designation, NWPMP 2026FF. Declared contents: industrial water pump assemblies, manufacturer origin listed as a commercial fabrication facility in Monterrey, Mexico. The declared gross weight on the manifest, 38,400 kilograms. A United States Coast Guard cutter, the USK GC Resolute Blade, a 154-foot fast response cutter, held position at the channel entrance 600 meters off the berth. Running lights on, 2 rigid hull inflatable boarding craft lowered and crewed. On the dock, 14 agents from HSI Counter Proliferation Division stood in 2 staggered lines behind a CBP inspection van, wearing plate carriers and HSI tactical jackets, rifles slung. 12 FBI special agents from the Miami field office were staged 40 meters back along the terminal access road in 3 black Ford Expedition LTDs, engines idling. 4 CBP officers remained at the X-ray bay console, the tomographic scan still cycling. 19 minutes. That is how long it took, from the moment the cutter's boarding team stepped aboard the Catalina Crest to the moment the last pair of flex cuffs closed on the dock. 19 minutes to end 14 months of one of the most complex dual-use export prosecutions the Department of Justice had put together since the Cold War-era COCOM enforcement actions. But none of it, not the cutter, not the task force, not the 38 sealed indictments, would have existed without a single arithmetic error on a standard CBP Form 75001 entry document, caught 6 weeks earlier by a 27-year-old manifest reviewer at a workstation in Terminal 4. This is the story of Operation Tidewater Seal, the largest illicit dual-use export interdiction at a U.S. port facility in a decade. It started with a number that didn't add up. June 4, 2026. Terminal 4, Port Everglades Customs and Border Protection Processing Center, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. 10:47 a.m. Daniel Okafor, Junior Manifest Reviewer, CBP Office of Field Operations, Port Everglades, had been in his current position for 14 months. Before that, 2 years at the Port of Houston Processing Center, and before that, a bachelor's degree in logistics management from the University of Houston. He was not a weapons expert. He was not a counter-proliferation analyst. He was a man who spent 8 hours a day reading cargo manifests on a dual-monitor workstation in a fluorescent-lit office that smelled of burnt coffee and toner cartridges, and he was very good at arithmetic. The manifest in front of him on the morning of June 4th was a pre-arrival filing for the MV Catalina Crest, due at berth 23 in 14 days. 41 line items, standard industrial freight. Okafor moved through the document the way he moved through every document, methodically, 1 line at a time, cross-referencing declared weights against unit counts, checking ECCN classification codes against the Commerce Department's control list. He reached line item 12. 12 units, described as centrifugal separator pump assemblies, model designation CSP 1940. ECCN classification, listed as EAR 99. Meaning the exporter had self-classified them as not requiring a validated export license. Unit weight listed per piece, 1,940 kilograms. Okafor did the multiplication in his head. 12 units, 1,940 kilograms each. The math should have produced 23,280 kilograms. The manifest declared the lot weight for those 12 crates at 23,280 kilograms. That part was correct. But the combined declared weight for all 41 crates on the manifest was 38,400 kilograms. Okafor added the remaining 29 line items. Smaller equipment, hoses, valve assemblies, fittings. Their declared weights totaled 15,120 kilograms, 23,280, plus 15,120. That was 38,400. The math cleared. He looked at it again. Then he pulled up the manufacturer specification sheet for the CSP 1940 pump model from the CBP Commercial Equipment Reference Database. The CSP 1940 centrifugal separator pump, per the manufacturer's published spec, had a dry shipping weight of 1,940 kilograms. He was not disputing the unit weight. What he noticed was something else. The CSP 1940 is a floor-mounted industrial separator unit. Its external dimensions are 2.1 meters long by 1.4 meters wide by 1.8 meters tall. He cross-referenced the crate dimensions declared on the manifest for the 12 pump crates: 2.3 meters long, 1.6 meters wide, 2.0 meters tall. Standard oversize clearance for that equipment. That part also cleared. But the total declared gross weight for all 41 crates was 38,400 kilograms. The manifest was internally consistent. The math added up. The problem was a second document he opened from the same filing package, the shipper's export declaration, filed separately through the automated export system. That document listed the total shipment weight as 23,280 kilograms, a difference of 15,120 kilograms, 15 tons, unaccounted, between two documents filed by the same exporter for the same shipment on the same day. Okafor flagged the discrepancy using CBP's Atlas targeting system and filed a Form 28 request for information to the filing broker. Then he picked up the phone and called his supervisor, CBP Port Director Sandra Morales, 52, 18 years with the agency, and told her what he had found. Morales listened for approximately 90 seconds. Then she told Okafor not to release the hold flag under any circumstances and called HSI. I spent time going through the case file on this, and one detail kept coming back. Okafor's flag wasn't triggered by a weapons alert. It wasn't triggered by an intelligence tip. It was triggered because two numbers in two documents didn't match. In a port that processes over 3 million container units annually, across thousands of manifest lines per day, that discrepancy was the width of the gap the entire operation slipped through, or tried to. The arithmetic matters here, because arithmetic is what broke the case. The CSP 1940 centrifugal separator pump. Manufacturer published dry shipping weight, 1,940 kilograms per unit. 12 units declared. 12 times 1,940 equals 23,280 kilograms. The manifest declared 23,280 kilograms for those 12 crates. Internally consistent. The shipper's export declaration declared 23,280 kilograms total for the entire 41 crate shipment. But the CBP Form 7501 entry manifest declared 38,400 kilograms for the same 41 crates. Discrepancy: 15,120 kilograms. 15 tons of something the exporter declared in one document and left out of another. In export control enforcement, a dual document weight variance like this points to one of two things. The first, a clerical error, the kind that gets corrected with a phone call and an amended filing. The second, deliberate weight manipulation, a technique used by illicit exporters to front-load the declared weight of a shipment with legitimate equipment and absorb additional undeclared cargo inside the same crates, counting on CBP to clear a manifest that adds up internally without checking the AES filing against it. By 2 p.m. on June 4th, HSI Counter Proliferation Division had opened a case file. HSI Special Agent in Charge Marcus Threadwell, 47, had spent 19 years at HSI, the last 6 assigned to the Counter Proliferation Division at the Miami field office. He took Morales' call at 2:11 p.m. and listened to a summary of Okafor's flag. He asked 3 questions. What is the ECCN code on the primary cargo line? What is the declared end user? And what is the destination port? The answers came back within the hour. The primary cargo line carried an ECCN classification of EAR 99, self-declared, no license required. The declared end user on the shipper's export declaration was a trading company registered in Panama City. The destination port was Havana, Cuba. Cuba is a U.S.-sanctioned country. Under the Export Administration Regulations and the Cuban Assets Control Regulations, administered by the Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Assets Control, virtually all exports of U.S.-origin goods to Cuba require a specific license from the Commerce Department, with narrow humanitarian exceptions. EAR 99 self-classification does not override OFAC sanctions requirements. An export license was not present in the filing package. Threadwell called the FBI Miami field office at 3:45 p.m. and spoke with Special Agent in Charge Patricia Drummond, 51,000, 22 years with the Bureau, currently heading the Economic Espionage and Counterintelligence Unit. He then placed a call to USCG District 7 headquarters in Miami to request coordination with their maritime security unit. By 6 p.m. on June 4th, a joint case file had been opened under a designation that would not be made public for another 6 weeks. Operation Tidewater Seal. HSI Counter Proliferation Division was designated lead agency. FBI Miami served as co-lead for financial and criminal conspiracy threads. USCG District 7 was assigned Maritime Interdiction Authority. CBP Port Everglades provided port access and inspection authority. The first sealed warrant, a Title III electronic communications intercept order, targeting the U.S.-based freight broker that had filed the manifest. A company called Coastal Meridian Logistics LLC, registered in Doral, Florida, was approved by a federal magistrate judge in the Southern District of Florida at 11:14 p.m. on June 5th. The case file designation assigned by the Justice Department's National Security Division was INV 2026-0441. Now comes the part that didn't make the press conference. At 72 hours into the investigation, the Title III intercepts on Coastal Meridian Logistics were producing call traffic. But the calls were short, the language was oblique, and the operational picture was thin. Threadwell convened a planning session on the morning of June 7th and confronted the core problem. The MV Catalina Crest was still 11 days from arriving at Port Everglades. 11 days was enough time to redirect the shipment, offload at a transshipment port, or abandon the cargo entirely if the broker suspected a flag. Moving too early would collapse the case. Moving too late risked the components clearing. The decision was made to hold passive surveillance and not alert the broker that the AES discrepancy had been flagged. But then, on June 9th, the Title III intercept produced something unexpected. A voice call, 22 minutes, between a number registered to a senior employee at Coastal Meridian Logistics and a second number registered to a logistics consulting firm in Miami Beach, Pelican Trade Advisors, LLC. During that call, the Coastal Meridian employee mentioned, in the context of discussing the Catalina Crest shipment, a phrase that the HSI analyst reviewing the intercept flagged immediately. The inside count is 460, confirm the inside count. 460, not 12 pumps. Not 41 crates of pumps. 460 individual items of something inside the shipment. The investigation shifted. HSI Counter Proliferation Division intelligence analysts began pulling every available database on Coastal Meridian Logistics and Pelican Trade Advisors. What they found over the following week described a layered export brokerage operation that had been running for at least 14 months before the Catalina Crest filing. The composite figure at the center of the financial architecture went by the professional name Marcus Delacroix in his dealings with domestic freight customers. His actual name in the federal case file is listed as Subject A, a composite designation. His biography, reconstructed from corporate records, bank filings, and communications intercepts, ran as follows. Subject A held a Master of Science degree in International Trade Finance from a European university. He had worked for 12 years in legitimate freight forwarding and export compliance consulting before establishing Coastal Meridian Logistics LLC in Doral, Florida, in 2021. The company had a functioning office, a staff of 8, a client roster of approximately 40 freight customers, and a clean compliance record with CBP through 2024. On paper, Coastal Meridian was an unremarkable mid-size freight broker. Subject A paid his business taxes. He maintained a modest residence in Coral Springs. Neighbors, when interviewed by agents later, described him as quiet, professional, someone who traveled frequently for work and always had a kind word at the mailbox. He drove a silver Honda Accord. Underneath that, Subject A had been operating as the primary U.S.-side logistics architect for a dual-use components acquisition network since at least April 2025. The network's function was procurement, identifying controlled or potentially controlled U.S.-origin machine tool components and precision manufacturing parts, acquiring them through domestic distributors using clean purchase orders under EAR 99 self-classification, and routing them towards sanctioned end users through transshipment chains that obscured the ultimate destination. The Catalina Crest shipment was not the first. It was, based on financial records later recovered from Pelican Trade Advisors, at least the 6th shipment in a series going back 14 months. The 5 prior shipments had cleared. The financial architecture supporting the network ran through three primary corporate vehicles. Coastal Meridian Logistics handled the U.S.-side brokerage and manifest filings. Pelican Trade Advisors, the Miami Beach consulting firm identified on the Title III Intercept, handled payments to domestic component suppliers and received wire transfers from offshore accounts. A third entity, a trading company registered in Panama, identified in the case file as the declared end user on the AES filings, received the cargo at the transshipment point and arranged final delivery. The Panama company's beneficial ownership, traced through FinCEN financial intelligence records and a mutual legal assistance request to Panamanian authorities, ultimately connected back to a set of accounts in Cyprus and a sanctioned country end user identified in HSI records as a restricted party under the IEEPA-administered OFAC Setidine list. The 460 individual components referenced on the intercepted call were, based on the tomographic X-ray analysis conducted once the Catalina crest arrived, precision machine tool parts classified under ECCN 2B999, a catch-all classification covering machine tools and related equipment capable of achieving specific tolerances relevant to controlled manufacturing processes. ECCN 2B999 items are not inherently weapons, but they are controlled for export to sanctioned destinations and to restricted end users under the EAR, and the export of ECCN 2B999 items to Cuba without a specific Commerce Department license is a federal violation regardless of the self-reported EAR 99 classification on the manifest. The exporter had self-classified the items as EAR 99 to avoid triggering an export license requirement. The actual ECCN classification, determined by HSI technical analysts in consultation with the Commerce Department's Bureau of Industry and Security, was 2B999. That single misclassification, compounded by the OFAC sanctions bar on the Cuba destination, was the foundation of the federal case. What's most surprising about this case isn't the size of the shipment, it's the discipline the network had maintained for 14 months across 5 prior clean shipments. 5 times, the manifests cleared. 5 times, the weight discrepancy between AES and CBP filings was either absent or small enough not to trigger a flag. The 6th time, the numbers didn't match. And that was the one sitting in front of Daniel Okafor on the morning of June 4th. The intercepts were building a case. The financial trail was hardening. The Catalina crest was 6 days out from Port Everglades. And then, 3 days before the vessel's scheduled arrival, Threadwell received a piece of intelligence from the Miami field office that changed the operational timeline. A confidential human source inside the freight brokerage had reported that Subject A was planning to be physically present at berth 23 on the night of the Catalina crest's arrival to supervise the offload. That meant the window for arrest was the ship itself, not a follow-on prosecution weeks later. Everything had to be in place before dawn on June 18th. Here's a take that will probably draw some disagreement. A network that ran 5 clean shipments through a major U.S. port over 14 months is not a failure of intelligence. It's a failure of routine. The ECCN 2B999 classification check and the dual document weight comparison that caught this shipment were tools that existed before the first Catalina crest shipment ever filed. The question isn't whether the tools were there. The question is whether they were being applied consistently to every filing. 5 prior shipments suggest they were not. To say it plainly, the system that caught this on the 6th try should have caught it on the 1st. Pre-raid planning for Operation Tidewater Seal ran over 4 days, June 14th through June 17th, at HSI Miami field office. The tactical problem wasn't the vessel itself. The MV Catalina Crest was an 8,400 deadweight-ton feeder container ship with a crew of 22, none of whom were expected to resist. The problem was, the arrests had to happen simultaneously. Subject A and at least 3 associates connected to the brokerage network were expected to be at or near the port during the offload window. Separately, 8 additional individuals connected to Pelican Trade Advisors and the Panama trading entity's U.S.-based support structure were to be arrested at residential and commercial addresses across Miami-Dade and Broward counties at the exact same moment as the vessel boarding, to prevent any communications that could trigger document destruction or flight. The operation split into 3 concurrent elements. Element Alpha, USCG boarding team from USCGC Resolute Blade, 8 personnel, supported by 4 HSI Counter Proliferation agents, tasked with boarding the Catalina crest, securing the crew, seizing the forward hold cargo, and detaining any network personnel present aboard. Equipment: M4 carbines, Glock 19 sidearms, RIB tactical boarding craft, body armor, night vision monoculars. Element Bravo, HSI Counter Proliferation Division arrest team, 12 agents, supported by 6 FBI special agents from Miami field office, tasked with arresting Subject A and 3 identified associates in the Berth 23 dock area. Equipment: HSI tactical vests, Glock 19 sidearms, flex restraints, 2 CBP inspection vehicles as concealment. Element Charlie, FBI Miami field office arrest teams, 24 agents divided into 6 two-person units, each assigned 1 residential or commercial address across the county, executing simultaneous warrants on 8 additional subjects. Equipment: FBI tactical vests, standard service weapons. Bearcat armored vehicle staged at the Doral staging point for contingency. 1 problem surfaced during planning. The port's AIS vessel tracking feed showed the Catalina crest had reduced speed approximately 40 nautical miles south of Port Everglades at 10 p.m. on June 17, raising the possibility that the vessel's arrival at Berth 23 would be delayed past the pre-dawn window, compressing the simultaneous arrest timing with the Element Charlie residential warrants, which had been timed for 4:30 a.m., when subjects were expected to be home and asleep. Threadwell held a phone coordination call with all Element leads at 11:45 p.m. on June 17. The decision: hold all elements at standby, execute simultaneously regardless of delay, with a maximum flex window of 90 minutes. If the vessel had not reached Berth 23 by 6 a.m., the residential warrants would execute independently, and the vessel boarding would follow on arrival. The Catalina crest arrived at Berth 23 at 4:17 a.m. on June 18. At 4:22 a.m., Threadwell transmitted the single-word go signal over the encrypted HSI tactical net. Tidewater, execute. 4:22 a.m. The USTZ Resolute Blades 2 RHIBs, each carrying 4 USTZ boarding team members and 2 HSI agents, crossed the 600 meters from the cutter's position to the Catalina crest's port side in under 3 minutes. The boarding ladder was deployed against the hull at 4:25 a.m. The first U.S. Key boarding officer, Petty Officer First Class James Farrow, 34, 8 years with maritime law enforcement, reached the main deck at 4:26 a.m. The ship's captain, a Honduran national, was located on the bridge and informed of the federal boarding authority under 14 U.S.C. 522. He did not resist. The crew of 22 was assembled on the main deck and accounted for within 7 minutes. No weapons were discharged. No crew member resisted. The forward hold was unsealed at 4:33 a.m. On the dock, Element Bravo moved at 4:22 a.m. Subject A was standing near a terminal forklift, approximately 30 meters from the Catalina crest's berth position, speaking on a cell phone. 2 HSI agents in civilian dockworker coveralls had been staged at the terminal for 40 minutes. They closed the distance in 6 seconds. Federal agents, put the phone down and put your hands on the vehicle. Subject A complied. He said nothing. He was placed in flex restraints at 4:24 a.m. His 3 associates, 2 present on the dock, 1 in a vehicle in the terminal parking area, were detained within the following 4 minutes. Across Miami-Dade and Broward counties, Element Charlie's 6 teams executed simultaneously at 4:22 a.m. 4 of the 8 residential and commercial addresses produced immediate arrests. At a residential address in Hialeah, 1 subject barricaded inside a bedroom for 11 minutes before HSI negotiators made phone contact and he opened the door. No force was required. At a commercial address in Doral, the registered office of Pelican Trade Advisors, the subject was found in the server room at 4:27 a.m. in the process of connecting a portable drive to a desktop workstation. The agent on point reached him before the transfer initiated. Step away from the desk. Federal agents, keep your hands where I can see them. The drive was never connected. The server was seized intact. By 4:41 a.m. on June 18, 2026, 19 minutes after the go signal, all primary targets were in custody. The Catalina crest was under federal control. The forward hold was being photographed and inventoried by CBP evidence technicians. 38 individuals across the dock, the vessel, and the county addresses were in flex cuffs. The arrests were clean. The vessel was secure. The server from Pelican Trade Advisors was in evidence bags. But as the CBP evidence team began working through the forward hold of the Catalina crest in the first light of the Florida dawn, what they found inside the 41 crates was more than anyone on the dock had expected, and it would take federal analysts the next 8 weeks to fully account for. The 41 wooden shipping crates in the Catalina crest's forward hold were opened and inventoried over 6 hours on the morning of June 18th. The 12 crates designated for CSP 1940 pump assemblies each contained, as declared, one centrifugal separator pump unit. But each pump had been disassembled and its interior cavity packed with additional components nested inside the pump housing. The tomographic scan conducted in the CBP X-ray bay had shown internal density anomalies consistent with nested secondary cargo, anomalies that, on the scan image, the CBP technician had flagged as irregular internal compartment structure at 3 a.m., 2 hours before the Catalina crest docked. The total component count recovered from across all 41 crates: 460 individual precision machine tool parts, milling inserts, spindle bearings, high-tolerance positioning screws, computer numeric control interface boards, servo motor assemblies, each item individually bagged and tagged. The combined ECCN 2B999 classification applied across the lot. The export value, assessed by Commerce Department Bureau of Industry and Security technical analysts, was placed at $112 million. The actual total gross weight of the 41 crates, measured on the dock, 23,280 kilograms. Exactly the figure on the shipper's export declaration, and exactly 15,120 kilograms less than the CBP entry manifest had declared. The discrepancy Okafor had caught 6 weeks earlier. The 15,000 kilograms of declared weight that did not exist, a deliberate inflation, designed to make the manifest weight appear consistent with the expected weight of legitimate pump units, while actually carrying 460 additional components distributed through the interiors of the pump housings. The press conference was held at 10 a.m. on June 18th in the Port Everglades Terminal 4 Administrative Building. HSI Special Agent in Charge Threadwell read a prepared statement. The U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida stood to his right. The CBP Port Director stood to his left. The statement confirmed 38 arrests, 460 components seized, and the unsealing of a 47-count federal indictment in the Southern District of Florida under case number 26 CR-0841. At the back of the room, Daniel Okafor stood with 2 other CBP manifest reviewers. He was not named in the press conference. He had returned to work the previous Monday. One detail from that morning stays with me. When the CBP evidence team pulled the last component from the final crate at 10:32 a.m. and the inventory tally hit 460, the technician doing the count said nothing. She just circled the number on her clipboard and handed it to the lead HSI agent. That was the moment 14 months of work resolved to a single confirmed integer. No celebration, just a circle around a number. Would you have caught what Okafor caught? 14 months of clean shipping, a manifest that adds up internally, a difference only visible if you cross-reference a second document that most reviewers don't pull for routine freight. Drop your answer in the comments, we read them all. The 38 defendants were processed through the Southern District of Florida federal system over the following weeks. But as the prosecution team at the U.S. Attorney's Office began building the trial package from the seized Pelican Trade Advisors server, what they found on that server was larger than what the indictment already described. The client files, the communication logs, the wire transfer records going back 26 months. The network was not limited to 38 people. Trial for the primary defendants began in February 2027 in the Southern District of Florida before United States District Judge Raymond L. Andover. The defense strategy for Subject A centered on 3 arguments. The first, that the ECCN 2B999 classification, applied retroactively by HSI, was a post hoc recharacterization of items that the exporter had legitimately self-classified as EAR99, in good faith, consistent with industry practice. The second, that the Cuba destination on the AES filing was an administrative error. The intended transshipment point was a third country, and the final destination had been misrouted in the automated export system by a data entry contractor. The third, that Subject A had no personal knowledge of any sanctioned end user. and had relied entirely on representations made by the Panama Trading Company's representatives. The prosecution presented the following. The Pelican Trade Advisors server, recovered intact before the portable drive transfer could be completed, contained 847 gigabytes of operational records. Within those records, 22 months of encrypted email correspondence between Subject A, Pelican Trade Advisors principal, and a contact identifier linked to the Panama Trading Company. Within that correspondence, 14 explicit references to the sanctioned end user's identity, including 3 emails in which Subject A acknowledged directly that the cargo's ultimate destination was a restricted party under OFAC sanctions. The prosecution also presented voice print analysis, matching Subject A's voice to 31 of the Title III intercept recordings, including the June 9th call in which the phrase, "The inside count is 460, was spoken. The jury returned guilty verdicts on 31 of the 47 counts after 6 days of deliberation. On April 14, 2027, Judge Andover handed down sentencing. Subject A received 22 years in federal prison, no parole eligibility, under the Arms Export Control Act, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, ITAR, and 18 U.S.C. 1956 money laundering statutes. Forfeiture was ordered on $112 million in assets tied to the export ring, including the 3 corporate entities, 8 U.S. bank accounts, and 2 residential properties. The Pelican Trade Advisors principal received 17 years. 6 additional defendants received sentences ranging from 4 to 14 years. 19 defendants accepted plea agreements prior to trial. The aftermath extended beyond the 38 indicted defendants. The Pelican Trade Advisors server contained records of contact with at least 9 additional individuals and entities outside the United States. 4 of those contact identifiers were cross-referenced by HSI analysts against existing Treasury OFAC SDN list entries and Interpol databases. 3 matched. Interpol red notices were issued for 2 foreign nationals identified in the server records as having received prior shipments from the network, shipments that had cleared before the Catalina crest. A 4th foreign contact was identified as a senior official at a state-owned trading company in a jurisdiction under existing IEEPA-administered sanctions. The asset forfeiture proceeds, $112 million in recovered and auctioned assets, were directed to the Treasury's Assets Forfeiture Fund, with a designated allocation to the Commerce Department's Bureau of Industry and Security for counter-proliferation enforcement operations. The 5 prior shipments that cleared remain under active investigation. HSI Counter Proliferation Division, in coordination with Interpol's Project Eden Export Control Initiative, has traced partial records of 3 of those shipments to transshipment ports in the Caribbean and Central America. The components from those shipments have not been fully recovered. Today, the foreign contact files from the Pelican Trade Advisors server sit inside Interpol case files and active HSI Counter Proliferation Division investigations. Those individuals are not yet in handcuffs. Something worth sitting with. The next Operation Tidewater Seal is probably already in progress somewhere. Not because of a sophisticated intelligence tip, but because someone doing a routine job is going to cross-reference 2 documents and notice a number that doesn't match. Will it get flagged before the ship docks or after? Comment yes or no, and tell us what you think the odds are. 1 weight discrepancy on 1 manifest, 15,000 kilograms that did not exist, 460 components that were never supposed to be found. Every container at every port in this country is a line on a form, waiting for someone to check the arithmetic. If you want to keep walking through federal case files the way the agents themselves walk through them, subscribe to FBI Documents and let us know in the comments which operation you want us to open next. Case closed.